Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our next session. And apologies for the slight delay. We are now at session 8, and I'm very pleased to welcome back Vishaki Connor. Vishaki is a strategic and transformation leader who blends commercial acumen with human insight. She's led large-scale transformations across FMCG, retail, consulting, banking, technology. But also what's really impressive is she's a speaker, a writer, and also a board member, and has over 30,000 LinkedIn followers and has some very fascinating stories and insights that she shares from her career. She's also the creator of the LIFT framework, which I know she's going to talk to us about shortly, and has a global inclusive perspective shaped by years of experience and life across 4 continents, based in Melbourne, to talk to us about future-ready leaderships in times of transformation. Thank you, Vishaki, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And it's a topic so very close to my heart because of a number that nearly did not fit on my screen. So we spend globally $48 trillion on transformations and projects. $48 trillion every year. And you know what? 70% of them fail. How many of us have been in rooms like this where, there's project papers all over the room, it's our war room, and you've got post-it notes and everything, $48 trillion, 70% of them fail. And then Gartner says that apparently by 2030, 80% of project management jobs will be replaced by AI. So thank you, Gartner. You're telling me that we are wasting trillions of dollars already, and somehow in the next kind of 4 years or so, ChatGPT will solve our problems? Really? And then on top of that, you already see the likes of Deloitte, like the top 4, refunding the Australian government because their report was generated by AI and full of errors. We still fight over agile product management projects or waterfall. We fight over Industry 5.0 and layoffs. My goodness, how many of us have been impacted, right? So in all of that, if you're not future ready for that, you know what it's like? It's like trying to drive a high-end luxury car. So you've got this powerful engine. You've got all your tech, your robotics, your AI, super powerful engine. You've got world-class interiors, like your governance, your PMOs, your dashboards, and everything else. Super high-end car. And you go to drive it. And if you're not future ready, it is like having this car with no fuel because there's no belief, with no steering because there's no leadership that is future ready, and with the handbrakes on because we're all scared, we're in silos, we're just tired of all these changes. That's what it's like. So how do you supply that belief and steering and energy? And what is this future ready leadership? For me, that is leading with clarity. There's so much context that is keeping on changing around us. So we need to build systems that flex with it. We need to build cultures that really believe and people that can move forward with purpose even when the path shifts around them, because the path will shift and will shift faster in future. And what makes someone a leader that is future ready? And these are hard. I know it's easier to put it on paper, but it's hard because you have to adapt faster than your environment, which is already changing very, very fast. You have to balance head, the data, and the heart, the belief. And those are often seen as kind of different skills, but you have to learn to bring them together. You have to then learn to translate your strategy into story that can build systems that outlast you. Because there's no point having you there all the time. A future-ready leader means you're there to solve many problems. You're building a system here that will outlast you. So before I go on, why listen to me? Because I've done this many times. And as Fatima was saying, I am a transformation executive, senior executive now, worked across many different countries, many different industries, tech, banking, consumer goods, retail, healthcare now. And I've built many, many, many high-performing teams, led multi-million-dollar transformations, and I'm a board member. I write on LinkedIn, etc. But The biggest thing I'm known for from many of the people who've worked with me is that blend of head and heart, of building belief and clarity and courage during change. Because I'm super passionate about helping leaders thrive in transformation, no matter what the future is, without losing yourself. Your identity is so important. Maintain that through times of transformation. So, how do you go from that handbrake stalled car to highway? My advice, learn to lift. Literally, I started powerlifting 3 years ago, and it's changed my life. It's changed my belief what I'm able to do. It's built muscles. You can't see it because of this, but I assure you, it's built muscles. It is awesome. Here I am lifting on my back, something that is bigger than my body weight. And I would never have believed that. And that is it, right? That is my one thing you will lift. Just lift in a slightly different way with two T's. So it's lift with two T's. And that's what will make you future ready in times of transformation. So the 5 disciplines to become a future ready leader leading through transformation are L, I, F, T, and T. Lift. Let's get straight into it, right? So the first one is listen. What really is happening? Be curious. Go out there, go and meet your frontline people, your shops, your customers, your users, because transformation begins with context, not just a conviction that, oh, I can make this happen. No, you have to understand the hidden assumptions behind the system. You have to understand what people are really thinking, all of that. So, for example, I led one of Coles' largest digitally enabled transformations to build a Salesforce supply portal with 21 different applications. It brought together 20,000 people externally to 1,000 people internally. It was a massive thing. But to do that, well before the business case, like a year before the business case, and I spent months and months and months doing 120 different one-on-ones, and at every layer, the executive layer down to the front-end users, we conducted surveys of our suppliers. There's 5,000 organizations that are Coles suppliers. We did surveys of them. I went out into stores. It's those stories that gave me the understanding of the pain points, the joys that they have today that we should not lose through this transformation. It gave me kind of buy-in to this cohort from an early start. So it did give me trust, but it also helped me understand the truth. Because to become future ready, you need to understand the truth, which is always evolving and changing. And you have to have a connection to the front line, to the users, to the customers, to your suppliers, to the whole ecosystem of it. If you do that, you will create psychological safety. So you will have people who are more open to come and tell you how things are really, really going. You will uncover hidden assumptions, like I said, and you will accelerate buy-in. So by the time I went to this capital committee and I asked for $40 million for a non-revenue generating project, that's a massive, massive amount. And I got the buy-in straight away because I had taken the time to listen and I could tell those stories. Over time, you will create this culture of inclusion. You will get rid or at least reduce the fatigue. People are not going to go, here's one more transformation to get through. You'll get the belief, you'll get the ownership. So that's number one. To do it really in practical terms, you start early. Like I said, go talk to frontline experts who've been there. Start to listen beyond their words. Like, what's their energy like? What's their emotion like? What's their tone like? Are they saying words but meaning something else? And when you do this, yes, there will be lots of complaints because you are listening, so they'll open up. But your job is not just to take the complaints and write them down. Your job is to find themes, find patterns. They will become your priorities, and make sure your first deliverable, even at the exec level, is not the plan. Don't go and tell them, here's what you should do. Give them a shared understanding first. Anchor all of you in a shared understanding. So every time you come up with resilience, you can refer back to that shared understanding. If you miss this, you won't be future ready because you will optimize something you do not fully understand, and you may repeat mistakes that history has already taught. Once you've done that, you now need to come and inspect to understand what levers can we pull. Because it's all well and good to get empathy, right? So you now have empathy for all these people you've listened to, but without evidence, that is just empty. So, for example, when we did a massive turnaround in strategy at CUB and we were not getting the results we wanted, our hypothesis was that it's the process that's missing. And we went in thinking, oh, we need to fix the process. But once we did the actual work, and it's like, I think it was like a 250 or 300-page document of surveys, data, and inferences from the breweries, from the sales, from everywhere, we realized it is not the process, but the structure. And we could have gotten it just wrong if we did not actually inspect the people, the process, the systems, the data, the everything. And we then could change the structure to make it far more integrated, to make it vertical from a kind of disjointed horizontal condition. And that came because we inspected. Because you need to inspect not just the symptoms that people told you from your listen stage, but the actual symptoms. That's how you will understand and isolate where the breakdown's happening. You will reduce your analysis as well, because once you know what's happening, you will be able to focus and surface on quick wins. But over time, you will be, even through this type of lifting, build your muscles, right? You will build your decision-making muscles. The organization will build its muscle because you're going to bring together people, process, priorities, and make it really, really transparent. How do you practically do this? Firstly, look across silos. No matter who has employed you, where, which function you're leading, which project or business you're leading, connect people, connect finance, operations, people insights, and question the metrics. Question the metrics to go, what are they really measuring? What is the assumption behind it? Study the incentives that people have. What behaviors are those incentives driving? And really, really map the effort you're putting in versus the impact it can bring so that you can focus on what will make systemic change. If you don't do this, you won't be future ready because you will mistake activity for progress. You will mistake outputs for outcomes. And I know this is a repeated theme throughout today. We need outcomes. And for that, you need to have listened and you need to have inspected. But once you've done that, you're ready to frame. What does good look like? Because ultimately, you need to be bold by being clear and visible. So you need the clarity that is visible to everyone. So this is the transformation that I was talking on before when we did an overhaul of strategy at CUB, and that needed us to shift organizational focus from this number one beer brand, and Australians would know it, Victoria Bitter, to a very small regional brand called Great Northern. And this is a massive, massive, massive shift. But this, once it was aligned, and it took many months of listening and inspecting to get this aligned, but once this was aligned, this had to be told to everyone that we are not going to try to turn around Victoria Bitter anymore. So it was declining at 10%. No, your new target is not grow it by 2%. It's maybe a stretch, so maybe decline by 9% or 8%, so stall the decline or slow the decline a bit. But more importantly, your objective is to offset that decline through the growth of Great Northern. And years later, an ex-colleague at a completely different setup was talking about how, when working in this company, he felt that the entire company was clear that we had to go back Great Northern, this new brand. And that is what you need. You need everyone to be clear, to be empowered, to make their own choices because you have clarified the why behind it. Because as a future ready leader, you have to frame the transformation with that courage, with that clarity. Even if you have to take huge bets, you have to make it clear to everyone why you're doing that, what the reason is, and what we're going to do. So your priorities and trade-offs are very, very clear. You reduce the noise, the confusion, and get the quick momentum. But over time, you will get organizational confidence and trust and bring together that strategy to execution, the culture. You will hardwire this discipline in the entire company, that we need to make trade offs. We cannot have 200 different priorities, then nothing is a priority, right? How do you actually do it? You start with purpose. Start with the problem. What is it that we're truly solving for? And define success and failure in plain language, no buzzwords, right? So you say very clearly, yes, your biggest brand will decline, and we are okay with that. But your this smaller brand has to grow by this much to offset that decline. We're gonna have inefficient breweries because it's no longer such a big brand, and that is okay. We're gonna have different sales metrics. So very, very plain language. Name the trade-offs openly and tell the teams why this frame matters. What is the structural change in the market? What are customers drinking these days? So they understand and they can be empowered to make decisions as the context flexes. Because they every time it will. No one's going to want you as the bottleneck for every decision in there. If you don't do this, you won't be future ready because you will make every initiative urgent in your team's mind. And there won't be any space for anything to be transformative, right? Once you've done this, you're nearly ready to lift. So you've done your listening, your inspecting, your framing. Finally, you're ready to transform. So yes, you were brought on to transform, but unless you do your L and the I and the F, you cannot lift. So yes, it is absolutely important to execute and turn that belief into rhythm that keeps on going. So for example, when Coles automated the first DC, and now there's two, and almost there will be a third soon. We learned from the partner who helped us that 70 to 80, they've done 70 or 80 different automated DCs like this across the world, that the biggest risk to these things is supplier readiness of pallets coming in that are not to standard, the robot can't handle it, there's a backlog, there's very little space in these kinds of DCs for pallets that don't work, etc. So you don't get the efficiency, right? So in the 2 years, we had to understand the practical reality. What is the baseline? We didn't quite know because at manual DCs, there's no robotics measuring. So we had to set the baseline. Who will measure the baseline? We needed actual people. When you walk into DCs, and some of you may have gone to these big warehouses, they are hundreds and hundreds of meters long. So if you expect them to go from where they're working with forklifts to the computer room, which is a few hundred meters away, the entire day they're going to be walking and doing kilometers of walk. So they need iPads or at least some tablet where they can log errors on the spot. You need someone at the center who takes those, makes a report, sends it to suppliers, because otherwise they don't know what's happening. You need someone who handles the supplier and almost case manages each kind of wrong delivery or not to standard delivery to go, how do you fix this? And some of them may need big investments by the supplier themselves, right? So understanding all of this and executing and delivering milestones, absolutely critical. And remember, you don't just deliver milestones. You're going to design a system that sustains, which is why when people said, oh, you will get all these people under your team, I said, no, we need to embed this into the system, into the DCs, into the supply chain organization, into the commercial organization who faces the supplier, because this has to last beyond the project. That is what real transformation is. So yes, you will have your visibility and rhythm and your measurable progress, etc. But it also in the long term needs to outlast the leader. You need to embed that ownership and build again that organizational muscle, right? And finally, if you're going to do this practically, you have to establish your operating rhythms. You have to make the progress visible. And like I said, design that accountability into the system, not just within your project. And learn to celebrate some micro milestones, right? We had to get 20,000 products ready for these automated DCs across 2,000 suppliers. I assure you, every single day of nearly 2.5, 3 years, we had so many problems. But we always had some milestone, so some product got ready, some supplier changed their entire fleet to get ready for us. Celebrate those milestones. Tell those stories again and again to people. Because if you miss this, you will see momentum fade. You need that rhythm. So you don't end up chasing just numbers, you're enabling outcomes. Finally, you're ready for the double T. And we're back to people again because you now need to tell the story of why this matters. Because facts will inform, absolutely. You're going to run your projects on your milestones and dependencies and everything. Super important to have that execution rigor. But you need stories to inspire. And that is a rarer talent. You have to build that to be future ready. There's so many things that'll change around you. So remember the transformation of going from the biggest brand, stop turning it around and take Great Northern, a small brand, and bring it up. That was such a big change. I went across the country and I did 300 odd different small group conversations. So these are not massive town halls with thousands of people come to tell a story. No, go to the actual people and say to the brewers, here's why you were doing one single run of VB through the day because you need these tens of thousands of carton, but now we're going to do craft beer. And Great Northern, they're smaller. Yes, you are going to reset your machines multiple times a day. Yes, it is inefficient. But what are you actually drinking when you're at a pub? When you go to the talent team's conversation, you go, are you going to put your best marketers against the biggest brand? Because that's how resumes build, right? You put your best people to bigger and bigger and bigger responsibilities. Or are you give them the smaller number 22 brand in your portfolio because you will back it? How will you sell it to that awesome marketeer who's performed so well? If you're going to go to sales, you're going to go, you're selling new things. So your commission structures will change. What happens here? How are you? So there's so many stories that need to be told, and you need to tell it again and again because you need to turn that data into narrative. If you do this well, you will have that shared purpose. Your resistance will go down because you're aligned emotionally, and you will have a culture of storytelling in the organization and make this project, make this transformation a legacy, not just a phase. To do this properly, you're going to explain the why before the what and use narrative as much as possible. You know, well, like I asked the brewers, what do you drink at the pub when you go? Do you drink these kinds of beers? Do you drink craft beer? Has your drinking craft beer gone up recently? What does your adult son drink? And you share progress stories, not just status reports. Like put a person's picture on there, talk about what they've accomplished, put a team's picture on there, go out into stores and show a customer buying that new beer, show someone buying double pallets, triple pallets of that or cartons of that new beer. Humanize your metrics. Tell us who benefited, who made it happen, and keep repeating the story. So many times, my teams will tell me, but I sent that email. They didn't read it and they don't know and they don't see anything. Or it is still your story. Keep repeating it, no matter how well you know it now, how many times you've said it. That's why I said I did like 300 of these, right? Keep repeating it until you hear people telling it for you. That's when you know you've done the storytelling. So if you don't, people will fill the silence and not always with the truth, right? And then you won't be future ready. So that is how you will lift the 5 disciplines of future ready leadership. You will listen, you will inspect, you will frame, you will transform, and you will tell. These are the 5 disciplines that build your future ready leadership skills. Now, often people will say, but what if I do these 4 and they'll get me there? I'll tell you, and I tell you from a lot of experience, you can miss just one of them and the system will collapse under its own weight. Even one. And I'll tell you the risk of each of them, right? So imagine if you didn't listen enough. Your culture will never engage. You will not learn the context. You will have hidden resistance that you didn't think of, and they're not always overt resistance either. Like no one is kind of by design or by decision deciding to be resistant. They're just stuck in their ways of working, and unless you have listened carefully, you will not identify these potential sources of failure early enough. If you don't inspect, you will just chase symptoms. You're like, oh, but I've talked to so many people, I've gone to so many stores, I've talked to customers, I've talked to suppliers, I understand it so well, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. No, no, no. Go check your data, go check your processes, go check what systems are working or not, go check what human middleware connects systems, because otherwise you may be misdiagnosing. Listening is important, but connecting your inspection and your listening, the human and the data, the head and the heart, is super important. Imagine if you didn't frame, there will be no focus. Everything is a priority. And it seems so simple, but nearly every company you go in, each department will do their priorities, each team will do their priorities. It's not aligned. There's so much wasted effort. You're spending more capital, you're spending more time, you're spending more energy, and there will still be strategic drift. You will not get your strategy done. Imagine if you don't transform. Your plans will stall. You'll have this best plan, and yes, you have your priority, but you don't know how to execute. There's just fatigue in the system, and that never translates into a rhythm, into a system that repeats beyond you. And what if you've transformed and decide, oh, well, I don't have to tell the story now. They can see it's transformed. Without a shared story, you will lose momentum. That transformation will not stick without a shared story. So it is important to do all 5 in order to lift and build your muscles, right? So you have to do all 5 of them. So there you go. Now you can lift, right? You've all learned to lift. You're going to use this to build your muscle. But just like in the lifting that I was doing here, you need to practice it. You need to repeat it. You need to have the dedication, the discipline, the rhythms, everything to build that muscle. It's not going to, you do need the technique, which is why this was important, but you need to go practice that technique to get better and better and better at it. So now let's imagine that same luxury car again, right? Your powerful engine will roar to life. Your technology, your AI, your robotics, they will roar to life. Your world-class interiors will be just pure comfort. With governance, PMO systems, dashboards, everything else, it's going to be pure comfort. Why? Because finally, your brakes are released and you are the future leader who turns transformation from motion into progress, right? You've done that. You know how to do that now. So that's my wish for you, right? That's wherever you lead in the future, whether it's a business, a function, a team, a program, or a project. I want to remind you that to be future ready, you don't need to predict the future. You don't need infinite amounts of resilience in there. You do not need to move faster, harder, just burn the midnight oil, get burnt out, none of it. You just need to lift. And if you want more detail, I've got an ebook in here with that QR code. And if you have more questions for me, you can absolutely come on LinkedIn as well. I'm on LinkedIn, Bishaki Connor. But like I said, all you need to do is just lift to be future ready. That is all from me today.
Thank you so much, Bishaki. I actually feel really guilty here, sitting at this table, not lifting, not moving. So thank you for reminding me of that. No, I really appreciated that that presentation, and I can see that through the conversation, we've now got the chat working that others are putting in comments. Kerry said, excellent presentation and speaker. Thank you. Thank you, Kerry, for that comment. I do have a question and some comments. So if anyone else has questions, please put them into the Q&A, which you can see on the right-hand side. I really appreciated some of the things you were saying, where one of the things you mentioned, we talked about adapting, and you said adapt faster than your environment. And I think that was really timely, because so much is changing around us. So I think that really resonates so much. And the other thing that I really think you emphasized well was where you talked about mistaking activity over progress, which I thought was, really interesting, because I find a lot of the time that there is fixation on movement, but it's not actually making progress. So that was wonderful. Now, there is a comment and a question. So I'll just quickly share a comment from, I'll just put it on stage. So Maxa said, letters L and I are similar to lean management way of thinking. Go to Gemba, to the place where things happen, listen and respect people. So that was really great. Now, a question for you has come through anonymously, and it is, are you talking about risk appetite when you talk about framing?
It is part of it. So framing has to do with choices to start with, because as a company, you can do many, many, many things, but you do not have the capacity to do many things. So if you only have $100 and 100 people, you have to stick within that. So your next year or your next 5 years, you have just those $500 and 100 people times 5 years. So no matter how many good ideas you have to pick and choose. But yes, absolutely, as part of that, there is a risk appetite. So if you have 20, 30 different initiatives, so strategy is a very, very strict process in my head, where we start from the situation analysis and then we choose where we want to play. And as part of that, we make your choices, but also do your risk analysis. So the risk of making that choice is this. How will we mitigate that risk? Or do we collectively accept that risk? That needs to be very clear. So framing is not just risk taking, but risk is a very big part of it. And risk dashboards are a very big part of it as well.
So then on that note, when we think about working across diverse teams, cross-cultural teams, across divisions and organizations, appreciate every division often has their goals, their strategy, maybe sometimes thinking about theirs. How do you ensure alignment on transformation priorities when you also need to maintain speed and accountability? Any advice on that?
Yeah, and I'll go both ways. It comes both from the top and also from the PMO office. So definitely it is the leader's job, and including the board's job. And if someone's done the director's course, it is the board's job to endorse those choices and make those choices as well. And that choice needs to be clear. So it is definitely the leader's role to make those choices very, very clear. And also the leader's role to ensure that that cascades in a meaningful way, so that they're like, if you start with just their next level down, ensuring that supply chain versus finance versus marketing versus commercial, this is how you will relate. And if I see you making too many priorities, that doesn't work. Goal setting in organizations needs to be process oriented because of that. But the PMO plays a big role as well, because ultimately it's like they're at the coal face of knowing how much effort the company is actually putting in. And they need to be bold enough and clear enough, fluent enough in the executive language to make it clear to the executive that I heard you, and if my understanding is right, these are the 5 priorities you said you want to do. Here are the 100 projects that are happening here. And I think this is how they're related to those 5 priorities. And I think maybe these 20 aren't that related, or maybe they are lower priority or should be lower priority. So it goes both ways. Definitely a big leadership job, but the PMO can add so much value because you know what's actually happening beyond the dashboards, beyond anything else. You know what's actually happening. So make it clear to me as an executive.
And that in turn will then build the truth and trust that you talked about early on. And I loved also the comment around identifying themes, not complaints. So we are notorious at complaining about other teams or other functions not doing things right, and then just expecting things to magically change. If you could think of maybe a couple of suggestions that you would implore people that are listening today, and we've got people from all levels, what would be a couple of things you would say do more of this and do less of that? If you were to sort of leave us with some practical suggestions, what would those be coming from the perspective of an executive leader?
So the first one is always focus on what's within your control. So whether that's as the individual, as the team, as the function, versus what others must do for you. So yes, it is important, especially as a leader. You cannot get down to, yes, I know, isn't it bad that Fatima doesn't do that and her team doesn't do that? Never. It should always be, what can we do given the context that you know that that other team, whatever else, is not living up to whatever you assume is their job? What can you do is the first one. The second thing is really learning empathy, connection, and listening. So not just in the context of lift and that first stage of a transformation, but every day. There is never, I have not met in all of these years across all these countries, anyone that comes to work and says, I came here to do a subpar job. Everyone is doing their best. So where is our communication? Or maybe their life, like what is breaking down? Sometimes you just don't know. I have only just lost my mother, and maybe that is impacting how I'm coming across. Sometimes there's just different stories I've heard through the organization, or I've been here longer, I've seen something else. I have my own lens on. Sometimes there's a cultural lens on because I may be more related to respecting hierarchy, just coming from a more collectivist society versus another person that comes from a not. So understanding people, understanding nuances of humans, both in terms of their life, their organization, and their background is really important. Even your academic background. Are you an engineer? Are you a marketeer? Are you an artist? Like these will all make it different. So those two things, focus on what's in your control and really, really put yourself in the other person's shoes. Go listen, go build real human connections.
Thank you. And I'm sorry to hear about your mother. I did hear about that recently, and it was great that you got the opportunity to spend some time with her.
Yes.
I think your constant references to diversity and inclusion in not only in your presentations but in your storytelling, it references how well you do in terms of those that are following on LinkedIn who you've always got some entertaining stories and insights that you share, and you sort of weave in it stories of your experiences in your different roles, and I think all of those things, but you emphasize the key word here being listen, which is something that's been a repetitive theme over this conference. So I think that's great. And you also talk about being in the shoes of others, which again was something Renee spoke about earlier as well. I think as we sort of come to wrap up this session, I do think if people want to reach out to you, they should definitely follow you on LinkedIn. That would be the best place. And we'll share the slides after the session as well for those listening. But I can't thank you enough for being on our panel earlier, that people can watch it on replay, and also for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Big pleasure.
Thank you, Bishaki. Thanks, everyone, for this session with Bishaki. It was great. Just a couple of reminders. Our chat is working now, and so is our emojis and our Q&A. Please put your questions in the chat. We will try to get to them, and we will share them with the speakers. We'll also share the sessions afterwards. A quick reminder that during this next break and any break or any time, you're welcome to go visit the booths. A lot of the sponsors have offers and resources available to you that you can go and access as well. So be aware that that is there. Otherwise, we will see you for the next session, which is going to be an interesting panel talking all things about how the global PMO leaders won, and speaking with a number of special guests on that panel coming up in about 10 minutes time. So please join us there. Make sure you go visit the booths during the break, and also everyone can chat to anyone, request meetings with each other, find each other on LinkedIn just by clicking the little people in session icon, which is the fourth from the top on the right hand side of your screen. So you can message anyone and connect and stay engaged after the conference as well. Stay tuned.